Welcome to another week of the Kaur Singh Vaad Vivaad debate competition. You're watching Just Punjabi and I'm your host Ashmita. We are proud to present to you this very special series that captures a Sikh youth debate competition conducted in the official Lincoln Douglas debate format. We are so happy to have you on this journey with us. And every week you've been watching these debates and choosing your audience favorites. This competition is moving forward and you're now seeing our debate contestants in a new pairing, arguing for the opposite side that they argued for in the first half of the competition in this round. This is important so our contestants can step into their opponent's shoes, a hallmark of the classic debate structure. This program is being filmed at our Just TV studios in New York City, and I'm happy to share once again that a live audience is with us for this very special production. With that, it's time to move on to debate 6 of the quarterfinals. I have another random pairing of contestants who are joining me. You've seen these contestants before. Once again, they will be arguing the opposite side of the resolution.
So this is your second round of debate. How do you feel?
I'm feeling good. I'm trying to stay confident and stay on what I rehearsed.
Any big changes from your last round?
No big changes. I'm continuing to do the same thing. Hopefully I win.
All right, good luck. Thank you. So this is your second round of debate. How do you feel?
I feel good. I feel excited.
Any big changes for your next round?
I think the biggest change I want to make is making my arguments come across in a clearer way rather than just an effective way.
All right, sounds good. Good luck.
So let's bring our contestants back on the stage, arguing for the pro side, Samir Hirkewal. Samir, good to have you back. And arguing for the neg side this time, Ruhani Singh. Ruhani, welcome back. Contestants, please shake hands. Now, you've seen these contestants, but of course, the view that they're going to present is completely opposite to what you've heard them argue before. So, Ruhani, does this make it harder for you? I mean, of course, you've already done this now once, but you're arguing exactly opposite what you argued before. How does that make this challenge?
Well, it definitely makes it more interesting because I know the merits of the side I argue now, but I also know the potential pokes.
So you think it's an advantage to have done this before. Samir, what about you? Do you feel you have an advantage going into the second round?
I would have to agree because as I'm arguing on the other side, I know the rebuttals that I would use as the opponent and I know what I could strengthen in my own argument.
Wonderful. Well, these contestants are ready and I hope you are too because we're about to kick off debate 6 of the quarterfinals.
All right, are you ready on the pro?
Yep.
All right, your time begins now.
I affirm the resolution that a Gurdwara is a place of worship for Sikhs. My value is Sikhi, and my moral framework is the teachings of the Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Contention 1. Worship is the foundation of the Gurdwara. The Gurdwara exists to facilitate worship. Britannica 2025. The primary purpose of a Gurdwara is to enable Sikhs to connect with Vaheguru through worship. Historically, the purpose of a Gurdwara was to recite the Guru's teachings for those who could not understand Gurmukhi so that they will be able to worship Vaheguru. Core Sikh practices center around worship. As Sikhs, one of the pillars of Sikhi taught by Guru Nanak Dev Ji that we should follow is primarily within the Gurdwara, is Nam Japna, which is a central activity that involves worship. And in the Ret Maryada, it also states that the function of the Gurdwara is worship, showing how the space is fundamentally tied to the act of worship. Contention 2. The Gurdwara is designed to prioritize worship. The architecture of a Gurdwara reflects its purpose. Sikh Center of Delaware 2025. The Diwan Hall, the most prominent space of the Gurdwara, is specifically designed for worship. Without the Diwan Hall, the building is not considered a Gurdwara. It is where Sikhs gather to sing and listen to Gurbani, meditate and pray, While other spaces, such as the Langar Hall, support community and learning, they're secondary to the Diwan Hall, as the first thing you do when you enter the Gurdwara is Matna Tekna, which is a form of worship. Furthermore, the Guru Granth Sahib Ji is central to the Gurdwara. The placement of the Guru Granth Sahib Ji at the top floor of the Gurdwara and the respect it's treated with reflects the Gurdwara's focus on worship. The Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji is considered the heart of the Gurdwara, and reading and listening to Hukamnama in the Guru Granth Sahib Ji serves as spiritual guidance and is a form of worship. This prioritization in the Gurdwara aligns with Guru Nanak Dev Ji's teachings. In the Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji, Ang 103, Naam Ratan Ghar Mandir Sajya, meaning the jewel of Naam is enshrined within the temple. The Guru Granth Sahib Ji is being enshrined as the jewel of the Gurdwara to show how its focus is and primary purpose is worship. Contention 3. The Gurdwara's historical role has always centered on worship. Guru Nanak Dev Ji established Gurdwaras for worship, which was meant to unify the community. Townscape Heritage 2019. Kartarpur Sahib, the first Gurdwara established by Guru Nanak Dev Ji, was primarily a space for Sikhs to listen and reflect on Gurbani together. The collective act of worship in the Gurdwara brings the Sangat together. The practice of Kirtan and listening to the Gurbani strengthens the Sikh community's bonds with each other and with Vaheguru. Based on these original intentions, we can see that the primary purpose of the Gurdwara was to facilitate worship and in turn strengthen the community and learn. I conclude my case.
Wonderful. So now we'll have the negative.
I begin my case.
All right, your time begins now.
Respected judges, esteemed opponent, and dear audience, today we negate the resolution, a Gurdwara is a place of worship for Sikhs. First, it is critical to define the preposition of, quote, of, unquote, as according to Seth Linhamsberg's English prepositions explained. It conveys referential identity, meaning that something is entirely defined by what follows. So in context of the resolved, it means that a Gurdwara's fundamental feature, its identity, is of worship. And that is what we question today. Because a Gurdwara is not limited to the acknowledgement of Vaheguru. It is not limited to worship alone. But instead we must ask, what is a Gurdwara not of, but what is a Gurdwara for? And those are three key fundamental things. The first one being a Gurdwara is for equality. And then a Gurdwara is for activism. And a Gurdwara is for the welfare of Sikhs. And under these three features, we understand that Sikhi in this state can be defined by the promotion of Sarbat Ta Pala. Because at the conclusion of our ardas, we say, Nanak Naam, Charddi Kala, Tere Bane, Sarbat Ta Pala. By your will, may there be well-being for all. So first, we look at equality. Nowhere is more evident than this than in the practice of Langar, the free community kitchen. Every day, Gurdwaras across the world serve millions of meals to anyone in need, regardless of faith, caste, or religion. This is an institutionalized system of humanitarian relief. And we do it sitting together in the same area, no one higher than the other. And then we can look at this, that yes, equality, because everyone is equally deserving of food. Similarly, everyone is equally deserving of access to healthcare. We can see this in Bangla Sahib, in which a free medicinal clinic is worked so that everyone has equal access to the rights that they deserve. I worked with Saldif this past summer to host a free health clinic at my Gurdwara, and there we served more than 60 of our Sangat members because everybody deserves equal access to those human rights. Furthermore, during the COVID-19 pandemic, when governments failed to provide basic food security, it was Gurdwaras that stepped in, distributing more than meals, but then also oxygen concentrators. So the use of Gurdwara as this relief center has been not just now, but been far then. We can look at it in partition, when Gurdwaras provided food and water and medical assistance. Because overall, a Gurdwara that is not promoting Sarbat Ta Pala fails its fundamental mission. Because at our core of Sikhi, we work and we worship by worshipping welfare. So, what we understand is Jin Prem कियो तिन ही प्रभ पायो. Only those who love selflessly will find God. And that is why we serve selflessly. Then we have to look at how a Gurdwara is for activism. Gurdwaras have historically not been just centers of faith, but headquarters of resistance against oppression. This has started all the way back to when we looked at Guru Nanak's Dharamsalas, the precursors to the modern Gurdwara, that have become spaces where inequality of gender discrimination and religious intolerance were condemned. We can look at it to Stockton Gurdwara in California, where it became the center of movements against British rule in India, promoting revolutionaries and revolutionary plan for resistance. So, and this goes to 1984, when Gurdwaras directly came together to fight against the extreme pogroms against us. So, Gurdwaras are for activism. And then finally, Gurdwaras are for us, for Sikhs themselves, to promote our teachings and to promote our livelihoods. And this happens in a multitude of ways, especially when we look at the diaspora in North America and UK and Australia. These Gurdwaras became places where Sikhs children could learn Punjabi and traditions could be passed down, where immigrants could find community in a foreign land. It became a space of gathering. From Vancouver in 1908, it was a social service center. For me, it's always been a place of belonging, especially when I came from a community that didn't have many Sikhs, and now I do. So for me, it was for belonging. Furthermore, we've had in our Gurdwara Sikhs in clinical research come to share possible economic and business opportunities for individuals. It was for welfare of Sikhs as well. However, we must remember that this cannot be confused for serving economic corruption. It serves our economic benefit. So overall, to call Gurdwara merely a place of worship is to fundamentally misunderstand their role. So we negate the result. I move on to my rebuttal. My opponent focused on the fact that a Gurdwara enables connection, its architecture substantiates our Guru Granth Sahib Ji, and it unifies the community. And while this is all correct, absolutely, our worship is not limited to those ideals of praying alone. Our worship is larger and larger than that. I can bring up the Sakhi in which Guru Nanak Dev Ji had seen priests pouring water to the east. And then he started pouring water the opposite way, and they asked him, why are you doing that? He said, well, you're trying to get water to your ancestors. I'm trying to get water to my fields in Punjab. And they said, it doesn't work like that. And then he said, well, similarly to that, we can't expect our prayer without full action. Sarbatta Pala in all of these cases have meant action. And that is what true worship is in Sikhi. So, overall, it is in which we worship the ideas of positivity and learning, and we promote the ideas of Sarbatta Pala. That is our main goal as Sikhs. And a Gurdwara has always perpetrated those roles as being something that serves us, for us, not of us. Thank you.
I would like 3 minutes of prep time, please.
Starting now.
Begin your time now.
To begin my rebuttal, my opponent mentioned that a Gurdwara is for equality, activism, and that Gurdwaras serve langar and eat as a community. Gurdwaras are relief centers, resistance centers, and spaces of gathering. And I would like to clarify that I'm not denying a Gurdwara is not a place for community gathering and learning, but that it is not its main function or purpose, and that the main purpose of a Gurdwara is to be a place of worship. To understand how a Gurdwara is a place of worship, we must understand a Sikh's guiding principles to go to a Gurdwara. To simply state it, if Sikhs went to the Gurdwara for the community, then they could gather in houses. If Sikhs wanted an educational center, they could go to a school or an educational institution. But Sikhs go to the Gurdwara because the aspect of worship is tied into it as its primary function. Overall, my opponent mentioned a variety of things, what the Gurdwara does and how it empowers the community. And I'm saying that its primary function is worship, because a Gurdwara without the Divan Hall, without the Guru Granth Sahib, is not a Gurdwara. It's just a community gathering place. Without the Divan Hall, a Gurdwara can't be a Gurdwara, which is why a Gurdwara's main function is to be a place of worship. I conclude my rebuttal.
For 3 minutes for your crystallization. Your time begins now.
I believe I won this debate because the value of Sikhi is rooted within the Guru Granth Sahib Ji, which emphasizes worship and devotion to Waheguru. Gurdwaras as sacred spaces are primarily designed to facilitate these practices through Naam Japna, Kirtan, and Gurbani. While community gathering and learning are important, they are secondary to the Gurdwara's central purpose as a place of worship. While my opponent mentioned valid things a Gurdwara is, such as a relief center, a resistance center, a space of gathering, they fail to mention why these things are its primary function. I have demonstrated a Gurdwara is not considered a Gurdwara without its aspect of worship, without the Divan Hall, without the Sri Guru Granth Sahib. To honor the principles of Sikhi and the values it upholds, we must recognize the Gurdwara's true purpose, which is to be a place of worship. I conclude my crystallization.
Ready?
Yes.
Okay. Your time begins now.
My opponent and I have reached a consensus on many things. One of them including that a Gurdwara is a multifaceted place that serves a multitude of purposes. The second, that being it connects us to Waheguru in a way that nowhere else can. At a Gurdwara, we are met with our Sangat, and we are met with an understanding of Bani that is different from elsewhere. However, where we see confusion within mine and my opponent's argument is, what does it mean to worship? To worship means to learn. And my opponent had earlier said that, quote, a Gurbani is for those who don't know Gurmukhi. And later he said that a Gurdwara doesn't need to be an educational space, and someone looking for education can go elsewhere. So then, is to be educated a part of worship or not? We reach confusion there. And then we reach confusion about, when does worship become primarily ritualistic? Because when we simply just pray on Naam and we simply Naam Japna, is that enough? Or do we have to look for further means of promoting our Guru's ideals and our Guru's pillars? Our third confusion point is that Sarbatta Pala, my main criterion, is the Guru's teaching. And we see that in our Ardas. We see that in the fact that our Guru tells us to serve others. So when we are wondering what is a Guru's teaching, yes, it is Sarbatta Pala. And a Gurdwara is for Sarbatta Pala. And that is not just in Naam Japna. So while we haven't disagreed upon the fact that perhaps we honor the Guru Granth Sahib Ji and Bani more than we honor anything in a Gurdwara, what was understood is that to understand our Guru's teachings is to look at those primary and secondary roles as well, because those also make a Gurdwara. A Gurdwara doesn't consist simply of one thing, it serves for multiple things. And so in thus, what we understand today is, what does it mean to worship? How is that multifaceted? How does worship extend beyond ritual practices? And then what we leave with, for both of us, for all of us, is how do we extend our worship to common day? And that happens in many ways. We as individuals, as Sikhs, can worship outside of Gurdwara and inside of Gurdwara through promoting welfare for all with the lessons our Guru has given us. And the primary ways to do that is for each other as Sikhs, it is for activism, and it is for all else. Bulan chokade maafi deni ji. Vaheguru ji ka khalsa, Vaheguru ji ki fateh.
Amazing round, y'all. Thanks so much.
good. So you just finished both rounds of debate. How do you feel?
I feel good. I feel relieved.
So if this unfortunately is your last round today, how do you feel taking anything out of this?
I feel good. I feel good knowing that I prepared and that I learned so much more from it. And I feel good that I've met so many amazing people.
And do you think you won?
I don't know. It was a good round.
Sounds good. Good luck.
Thank you.
So this was your second round of debate today. How do you feel?
I feel accomplished, and I also feel relieved from the stress.
So now that you finished, what's the first thing you want to do?
I just want to roam New York with my family.
Sounds good. And do you think you won?
I hope I did.
All right, perfect. Good luck.
Okay, so this was thought it was a really interesting debate. One thing interesting about this that I want to start off the deliberation room with is we've seen both of in this group of judges, we've seen both of these kind of debaters in different people on the opposite side. So it's kind of interesting. Have you noticed some consistent strategies among debaters, or have you seen strategies change based on the matchup? That's kind of the thought I wanted to leave you all with to start your deliberation.
Yeah, I think we start every deliberation briefing with this. I think both debaters were excellent. I think their cases are just getting better and stronger, and their presentation skills as well. So I was really happy to see that from both debaters. I think from the affirmative side, there was a lot of strong case in terms of, exemplifying that Gurdwaras are a place of worship and that's why they exist. And I think that message was very strong throughout their debate. And again, they did say that just because there are other things that Gurdwaras partake in terms of community service and stuff, but their central purpose is core of worship. So I think that message was very well reiterated throughout the round.
I also thought the simplicity through which, again, both cases were wonderful and both speakers were wonderful. I think the simplicity through which the pro speaker, Samir, came in his second speech and was like, well, just consider this. A Gurdwara without Guru Granth Sahib Ji, without a Diwan Hall, is not a Gurdwara.
Yeah.
But a school or a health clinic without a Diwan Hall is still a school or a health clinic. And I think that's an incredibly simple way of putting it, but I think that's helpful to an audience because you distill it down.
Yeah.
And so I was impressed with that strategy because I was like, wait, I haven't heard it said like that yet today. And that makes sense to me. But on the con side, I actually was really impressed by the activism argument because I thought what she was talking about was really interesting. She was like, it's not even worship that we're talking about. We're not talking about any other activity except for strategizing. So a headquarter against British rule and fighting British rule, as well as a headquarter and thinking about how to respond to gender inequality during the time of the gurus. So I was surprised because I haven't heard that one yet said like that specifically. So I was impressed by that as well. So there was a lot of really, really cool stuff to see on both sides.
Yeah, on top of that, I think like you said already, there were a few things that really caught my eye, especially on the pro side. I think you already mentioned this already with the Diwan Hall and stuff like that. That the importance of that and how that defines the Gurdwara. I've seen the argument of the other spots around the Gurdwara, but never really saw just that the Gurdwara itself is defined by the Diwan Hall. Right, so that really stood out on the pro argument, and I think you also mentioned this already with the British and the activism. Right away when she mentioned the Gurdwaras went to revolt against the British, I thought of the Ghadar movement. Right, the Ghadar movement was really popular in California.
Yeah.
Right, a lot of people would go to Gurdwaras, talk about it a lot, especially in the U.S. and also British Columbia.
Yeah.
Right, so it was kind of cool that she had a little history reference there, and also a lot of modern references to the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
That I assume that you guys have seen it in all the news. Maybe you guys have participated yourselves.
Yeah.
The different the activism we did with the food, providing all that stuff at every different Gurdwara.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people did that, and also this reference to Bangla side that they had the clinics and stuff.
Yeah.
Just a lot of present and past, I guess you could say, examples of activism. I remember in the pro counter, I remember him mentioning that I think he said if Sikhs wanted to go to school, or they wanted to gather, they could if they wanted to learn something, they could go to school, or if they wanted to gather, they could go to a house. But you could do that at all separate locations. But the whole reason we come to the Gurdwara is to worship. I think that was a really also powerful rebuttal line that he made. And then on top of the small errors that the Khan side made, I think it kind of shows a little bit stronger towards the pro side. But I don't know what you guys think collectively on like how are we gonna decide on this?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just going to say, I think the pro in the crystallization did say that like there are other aspects to the Gurdwara, but again, bringing it back to that central point where the Guru Granth Sahib and the Divan Hall is kind of like their connection back to it. Like they acknowledge that these other facets exist and this like social aspect of the Gurdwara exists, but it's coming back to like the core premise, I would say.
Absolutely.
And they did that in the crystallization.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the point about the framework of Sarbat Tapala was interesting because she was talking a lot about how the way we need to judge this debate is based on Sarbat Tapala or prosperity for all. But then she did say in her crystallization speech again, she said, how do we extend worship through prioritizing welfare? And so to me, when you say, how do we extend worship, that means you're still extending worship itself. Okay. So I think that's where, to me, I understand what she was trying to say, but if I take her at what she was saying, that again continues going to the point of, well, worship is welfare. And I think she did at one point say, I could be remembering it wrong, but I think she did say we worship welfare, which is, you can argue very true within Sikhi, but then that does again dispute her point because she's saying that Gurdwara is not a place of worship. There is also, to me, an element to which the prioritization point wasn't responded to in terms of like the Divan Hall and what it represents, unless I'm misremembering, because to me that was another big flow point where I didn't see much to the Divan Hall being central to the group.
There was no clash against that, I think.
Yeah.
And then also one other thing I didn't see clash on was like maybe Gurdwara is like for activism from the pro, but I would give that like a little less priority because the debate essentially came down to, yes, these things are essential to Gurdwaras, but they're not their primary focus.
Yes, right? Which goes back to his contention.
Yeah, so I think.
Yeah, there was a con that I believe that we did miss though, that not con, sorry, a rebuttal from the con. Where I believe the pause, the pro said something about that the Gurdwaras are, a lot of people don't know Gurmukhi, so they go to the Gurdwara to worship, right?
Sure.
But the Khan said that that's the whole reason they come to the Gurdwara, because they're learning Gurmukhi and Bani, so it's a form of teaching. So basically saying that, like, you are right, they are coming for worship, but that's because they're technically learning how to understand it.
So I think the pros contention one is definitely something I'm going to give to the pro side.
I agree.
In terms of worship. Yeah. And then I think we also talked about contention two on the pro side, which is the Gurdwara design, and that's the Divan Hall argument that we're also giving to the pro.
And also he brought up Kartarpur Sahib, and there wasn't much response to the historicism of that.
Yeah.
And its primary purpose.
So I think the pros C3 is also flowing through.
C3 meaning contention 3, yes.
Yeah, so contention 3, contention 1, and contention 2 from the pro side are still standing in this case.
Yeah.
And the only rebuttal we have against that is like worship without action, or like worship and action, that kind of like
connects.
Did the Khan ever come up with a rebuttal against the architecture at all?
No. Not that I know. That's what we were talking about. I don't think so.
Okay.
I think like she started her crystallization off very strong in terms of like, here's what we agree on, which is
yes, I like that strategy.
And then connects us to Vaheguru, but then we disagree on like what is worship, and then the Sarbat Tapala and like Gurdwara for versus of.
Yeah.
So I think if it comes down to like the next side is definitely kind of hedging on like the technicality aspect of the debate, but if we look at the actual case, I still can flow contentions 1, 2, and 3 from the pro side.
From the con side, we have. Yeah, go for it.
Sorry, I was just going to say on the con side, I just see that like the essential rebuttal the affirmative has is that like these purposes are not denied by the affirmative. They still exist, but you're missing a central point of the worship is what I'm getting. I don't know what other rebuttals you caught.
Yeah, no, I think that's similar to what I flowed as well. And I think, again, the pro could have done that a bit more strongly by going through each point and trying to give other rebuttals as well. And I think this is where, like, it would have been even like more clear if the pro was to say, well, exactly, those are forms of worship. Because I think the way that the con needed to argue it was to say, actually, worship is just Nam Japana in order for her to win the debate. But I think she was saying worship extends further than that, which is kind of where it got a little bit lost.
Do you also want to think about speaker points while we?
I will say purely from a like public speaking point of view, I think I still might give con slightly higher speaker points than the pro. So I would maybe give the neg around 8 this round, and I think the pro around 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do
So
you
you want the neg to be better, speaking wise?
I think purely from a speaking point of view.
I think her emphasis, her enunciation, her
inflection.
delivery, she's very well rounded. She's a really good speaker.
I don't know, I kind of see them more as equals.
Okay,
Like,
that's fine. Yeah. So
We can all,
Yeah.
totally.
Uh.
What would you see their numbers as?
like 7-7.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, that's fair.
In addition to these kind of fallacies, let's also think about some arguments that people use in day-to-day life, and especially when we're debating Sikh topics, that aren't necessarily true. These aren't fallacies that are egregious, so to speak. People don't do these in a malicious way, but they're still ways of thinking that are faulty and don't make for good arguments. So one of these kind of faulty arguments, a logical fallacy, is argument from novelty. This is when people assume that just because something is new, it's true. So we could say, the year is 2025. Of course, it's time for X. Or, that's how things were done in the past. This is how things are done now. So while this could be part of you kind of saying something to lead into an argument, in and of itself, this doesn't, just because something is new or recent, doesn't make it good or doesn't make it true. As Sikhs, this is something we should all think about as well, right? When it comes to theology, when it comes to, interpreting history, right? How do we balance between kind of, looking at historical evidence for things and at the same time being adaptable to new discoveries in the world, right? There is that balance and it's hard to strike, but what we should keep in mind is just because something is new doesn't always make it true.
Welcome back to the Kaur and Singh Vaad Vivaad debate competition. You've been following along debate after debate, and of course, you've been voting for your favorites. And the judges have been busy as well. As you've seen, their deliberations are no easy task. As always, we will be announcing the winner for this debate shortly, as per the judge's decision. But before we get to that decision, like we do every week, I'm happy to announce the winners of this week's audience favorite poll. Samir Hirkewal! Congratulations, Samir. You keep winning the audience's hearts. What do you have to say to them?
I put a lot of work into this debate, and I'm really thankful that the audience has shown their appreciation. Thank you.
And now, moving on to the final event for this week's episode, we have the winners. I have the decision right here in my hands. Drum roll, please. The winners of Debate 6. Ruhani Singh! Congratulations, awesome job. And with that, another debate comes to an end. We will pick up from here next week. Until then, you can write to us at ashmita@justbroadcasting.com, info@justbroadcasting.com, or follow along on our social media pages. This is Ashmita signing off.
I'm Upkaran Singh Pogal, a tech professional and real estate investor. Like many people, I used to think the only way to build wealth was by working hard at a 9-to-5 job. That all changed when I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The book opened my eyes to the power of investing, how real estate can create passive income and long-term wealth rather than just relying on a paycheck. I realized that building a portfolio of properties was a way to create financial freedom and gain control over my future. So, I dove into real estate investing, and let me tell you, it's been one of the best decisions I've ever made. Investing is key to securing financial independence. Whether you're looking for side income or a long-term strategy, real estate can make it happen. I'm passionate about giving back and teaching others how to get started on their investing journey too. So, if you're interested in learning more about real estate investing, feel free to follow me on Instagram and shoot me a DM.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. This is Harman Singh, Executive Director of the Sikh Coalition. For more than 20 years, the Sikh Coalition has worked to reduce hate, violence, and discrimination experienced by the Sikh community. Nationwide, we work in the court system, in policy, in education, community development, and media and communications to raise the Sikh profile and build a new future for Sikh youth. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.